Hello everyone, welcome to 2018 Spring Parents Dyslexia Summit. Our guest today is Susan Barton. She's an icon in the dyslexia world and someone I admire deeply. Susan is an avid advocate for dyslexia awareness. She supports children with dyslexia and their families. She is the founder of Bright Solutions for Dyslexia, where they educate parents and teachers on what dyslexia is and how they can find the right type of support. And in 2009, Susan was inducted into the International Dyslexia Association's Hall of Honor for her work and dedication. Thank you so much, Susan, for being on the summit.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Susan, like many of us, your work in this field began out of frustration and even maybe some desperation to bring support to your nephew, Ben. So before we dive into what dyslexia is, can you tell us about your journey?
Oh, it's such a painful journey. And sadly, one that many, many parents are still going through today. We did not discover that Ben's struggles were due to dyslexia until he was 16 years old. Now, his struggles were obvious way before then, but this was way back before the internet. This was way back before dyslexia was well known. You know, he's the type of child who was bright and could do so many wonderful things that we were surprised that he struggled so much in kindergarten. In fact, he flunked kindergarten. He was retained. He went through a second time, didn't do much better the second time. In first grade, they moved him on after twice because, you know, you don't go through kindergarten 3 times. The teacher was very well aware that he was struggling with reading, writing, spelling, math, penmanship, all those other areas, despite being an obviously bright kid and trying hard and having a really supportive family. So they recommended he be tested for special ed services, and he qualified for an IEP under specific learning disability in reading, writing, spelling, and math in the middle of first grade. He got services 5 days a week, day after day, year after year, after year, after year, after year. And his skills didn't get any better. Other things started to develop. I mean, his emotional reaction to school, you know, you had to drag him out of the car to try to get him to go to school. His self-esteem just plummeted. You know, I'm the stupidest kid in the entire class. Please don't make me go back, Mom. Homework was nightly battles, you know. Nobody knew. I mean, and his parents, desperate parents, tried everything they could. I mean, they didn't just sit there and do nothing. You know, in addition to special ed, they took him for vision therapy. They took him for occupational therapy. They took him for Sylvan centers. I mean, they did everything they could think of to try to help this kid until 9th grade. Well, actually, it was the beginning of 10th grade when he had his final triennial that he would have of his school career, where they test him all over again, bring in the parents and say, well, we hate to share this with you, but according to this latest testing, Ben is now reading at about end of 2nd grade level. He's in 10th grade. You know, he still can't spell. He still can't write. You know, he still doesn't know his math facts. But we think maybe it's time to face facts. Not all kids were meant to read, you know. And Ben seems to be one of those treatment-resistant kids who's never going to get any better. So we think it's time to stop torturing him with reading and give up on it. And instead, let's spend the remaining 3 years of high school trying to find something he'd be happy doing the rest of his life. It requires no reading, writing, spelling, or math. Despite having an IQ that's still tested above 130, that's in the gifted range. And that profile is not unusual. Dyslexia has nothing to do with IQ. So you can have a gifted IQ and struggle with reading, writing, spelling, an average IQ, or even a low IQ and struggle for the same reasons. And they said, by the way, we think perhaps maybe it might be dyslexia. But if it is, it's too late. If you don't catch it before the age of 9, there's nothing you can do anyway. Which turns out not to be at all true, but who knew? I mean, they were just in total shock with all this information. So they said, you know, we need some time to think about this. You know, can we get back to you? And they said, sure. And my brother and his wife went home and they cried for days. They prayed for guidance. They talked to everybody they could think of talking to, and nobody had any solutions. Nobody knew anything about dyslexia. And so after a couple of weeks, they went back to the school and said, okay, we give up. We'll sign the papers. And they said, just whatever you do, please do everything you can to keep him from dropping out. Because school is a miserable place to be when you can't succeed. And he was at high risk of dropping out. But they sent this email around to the rest of the family, sharing what the school had decided, what they'd recommended, and that they'd reluctantly decided to go along with the recommendation because truly they had nothing else left to try anyway. and included the sentence, by the way, the school thinks it might be dyslexia. That's the first time I'd ever heard the word. Now, I didn't know what dyslexia was. I didn't know whether he had it or not. I didn't know a thing about it. But I said, how can you all give up on him? Maybe somebody out there somewhere knows something about dyslexia. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe there is something that could be done. And that's how I started my journey more than 30 years ago now, before the internet. I mean, you couldn't, before all this information was freely and easily available, having no idea how hard it would be to find the information. And eventually I did find it, 2 books on dyslexia in the public library. Both of them, turns out, written by people who were trying to sell you something that didn't work, but I didn't know. I ended up, to kind of shortcut my story, ended up starting to learn about dyslexia by volunteering to be a tutor at an adult literacy center at our local library that happened to be one of only 6 in all of California at that time that were devoted solely to adults with dyslexia. And they had the research. And they told me about conferences I could go to. I didn't even know there were conferences on this. And they had a research-based program designed for people with dyslexia. So I learned that one first. And then the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. So I kept, I was probably somebody who volunteered for everything there. I went to all the conferences. I paid my own money. I did everything I possibly could to learn. And the more I learned, and then eventually they offered me a part-time position and a full-time position. And I stayed in adult literacy for 4 years, learning as much as I possibly could. And at the end of those 4 years, I said, what a shame that we're waiting so long to get these guys the help that they need. What would be different if we caught it earlier and worked with children earlier? And what would be different about working with children than adults? So then I joined and was hired by a dyslexia clinic, the only one in all of Northern California. And I worked there for 4 years, starting as a tutor and learning other Orton Gillingham systems, and then learning about the public school system and IEPs and all that morass and so on. And at the end of 4 years, it's like, I can't be satisfied helping 15 kids a year, kids of parents who finally know it's dyslexia, who are wealthy enough to be able to pay for this, who live close enough to take advantage of, when there's millions and millions and millions out there who need this help. And I don't think we need more research. We need to get the research into the hands of more parents and more teachers. They know what to do. They know what to look for. So I left the clinic and founded Bright Solutions for Dyslexia, which is a free information and resource center. We have a great website. We have tons and tons of videos and articles and links and so on. And then after a few years of doing that and traveling the country, giving talks all over the place for free on dyslexia, anybody who wanted to have me come, I'd come. I'd fly across the country just to speak to 20 people. I realized we needed more one more Orton Gillingham-based system that even parents could access and use, who didn't have the resources or even professionals in their area who knew how to help their kids. So that's when I developed the Barton reading and spelling system. So I still am passionate about this. I still spend over 12 hours a day, every single solitary day for 20 years and probably for the next 20 years, answering the phone, answering emails from desperate parents who are just stumbling across this the first time and saying, I think it might be, the school says no. How do I know? What do I do? How do I help my child? So that's what I do all day, every day. And you couldn't pay me to do anything else. In fact, I do it even if I don't get paid. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's a beautiful story and so inspiring to all of us. And it's amazing how you never gave up on Ben, and all the stuff that you have put out. And I hear from parents that emailed me, how much a difference your Barton system has made, because there was no one around them that could teach, or also maybe they were around, but they couldn't afford it. So it's very expensive to go through the journey. And
yes.
your program has made a big difference on so many kids' lives.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want anybody to think the Barton reading and spelling system is the only solution out there. There's not. There's many good Orton Gillingham based systems out there. It's just one. It's just one more option.
Yeah, that's true. So, what is dyslexia? I would like you to maybe explain to us in your own words how you see the dyslexic brain and what dyslexia is.
Okay. Well, I could talk for 12 hours about dyslexia, but I discovered there's an awful lot of misunderstanding out there about dyslexia. So whenever I talk to parents or teachers, I always start by sharing the 3 most common misperceptions, myths out there. That dyslexia means you can't read at all. That's not true. Everybody with dyslexia can read up to a point. But then they surprise everybody when this bright kid who is reading initially hits the brick wall in reading development by 3rd grade, if not sooner. And once they hit that brick wall, it doesn't matter how smart they are. It doesn't matter how hard they try, how hard the teachers try, how hard the parents try, unless they're taught very differently. They will not be able to get over that brick wall in reading development that they all run into by 3rd grade. But because they can read for a while, reading is actually the worst way to pick it up early. And as you know from talking to me and looking at everything on our website, early intervention is essential. The sooner we catch this, the sooner we can provide them with what they need, close that gap and let them achieve their potential and start healing those emotional scars that come even in 1st grade and 2nd grade from feeling like you're stupid. And they're absolutely not stupid. They just have to be taught reading and spelling differently. So if you want to catch it early, you want to catch it in kindergarten and 1st grade, look for the kids whose spelling is terrible. Spelling issues show up much earlier. Now, I have to tell parents, if you spend, a kid with dyslexia might be able to pass Friday morning spelling test if you spend hours and hours and hours every night trying to drill these 20 words into their head. To this kid, it seems like 20 arbitrary sequences of letters. Why a word has to have those letters, why it has to be in that sequence, they don't have a clue. But if you put in enough work and enough effort, and I mean a ton of effort, maybe if the spelling test is first thing Friday morning, they can hang on to it long enough to do okay on Friday morning spelling test. But despite all that time and study, they can't spell them a week later. Where you'll see the spelling fall to pieces is when they have to write sentences and stories. Oh man. When they have to write sentences and stories, they can't even spell those high frequency words correctly, like they, because, does, friend, where, were, any of those things. It can also impact how you hold the pencil and your penmanship. Dyslexia usually comes with dysgraphia too, although you can have dysgraphia with other issues. Listen for dyslexia. You can hear dyslexia if you know what to listen for. Listen for the kids who, when they say those longer multi-syllable words, often say the sounds in the wrong sequence. They're close, but they're off, like aminal, biscotti, hangaberg, hecalopter, hospital. You know, my adults still have trouble with those words like aluminum, statistics. And you know, one of the hardest words for my adults to say correctly is the word dyslexia. One of my first clues that I'm talking to somebody who probably has dyslexia is they can't say that word. I've heard it mangled so many different ways. And they said, what were you guys thinking when you named it this? I can't say it. I can't spell it. Are you guys just mean or what? And I said, I'm sorry, I would have called it something else, but that is the official name for this condition. Kids who are late to speak aren't saying 5 to 10 one-syllable words by about the 12-month mark, may not speak until 18 months or 2 years or 2.5 or more. Kids who, despite being read Dr. Seuss every night of their life and being able to repeat, nursery rhymes that they have rhyming, Jack and Jill went up the hill, can't easily create words that rhyme by the time they're 4. Out loud. This is not reading. This is just out loud. Kids who are late to establish a dominant hand. Kids who are constantly left-right confused. Even my adults are left-right confused, or any directionality confusion, before, after, first, last, over, under, north, south, east, west. Directionality confusion in time. I mean, that's why they can't tell time on a circular clock with hands. If you don't know where before and after is, or left, right, which way do the hands on the clock go, left or right, Mom? Well, sweetie, they don't go left or right. They go clockwise or counterclockwise. Oh, good. 2 more directions. And which way is before in a circle? I don't know. Kids who understand math concepts easily. They like math. They understand math concepts, but they can't memorize their math facts. They struggle with adding and subtracting facts. And boy, they'll hit that wall when they get to multiplication tables, because it impacts your ability to memorize rote random facts and things that seem not illogical. Days of the week in order, months and the years in order, the sequence of the alphabet in order, the names of the coins and their values, the states and their capitals. So dyslexia is highly complex. It affects many, 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 many areas. But please know, all kids with dyslexia can read up to a point, but they will all hit the wall in reading development by third grade. No, it's not flipping letters around. That's another myth that, oh, they just flip letters around, their BD stuff. Oh no, it's way more than that. That it's rare. I've had teachers come to my sessions and said, I had one dyslexic child once about 10 years ago. And I have to let them know, I said, maybe you had one who came into your class 10 years ago who had a formal diagnosis, because still today, most kids who have it have never had a formal diagnosis. But if you're a teacher, I can guarantee you have kids with dyslexia in your class right now. You've always had them. You always will have them, because it's a lot more common than most people realize. According to the researchers, if you count them all, because dyslexia comes in ranges from mild to moderate to severe to profound, but if you count all of them, according to the researchers, it's about 20% of our population. That's huge. That's 1 in 5. So if a teacher has a class of 30 random kids, how many in there are likely to have dyslexia? 4 or 5. Every single year. These are the bright kids who just spend hours and hours and hours on homework, whose written expression doesn't match their oral expression, who live in dread of being called on to read out loud in class, who will beg mom not to send them to school on the day there's a spelling bee in class, whose effort doesn't match their output, even close. And it's inherited. A lot of people don't realize it's inherited, so they don't realize that the biggest warning sign of all for dyslexia is known or suspected dyslexia in the family tree, close relatives who have it, not like 18 generations ago. It's a mother, a father, a brother, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, pretty close. And I warn parents all the time, if you know or suspect there's dyslexia in a close relative, you need to start watching this kid carefully, because that puts this kid at high risk. How high is the risk? 50-50 odds. It's like a toss of the coin for every child born into this family tree. Is this one going to come up heads or tails, heads or tails, heads or tails? It is one of the most heritable conditions out there. So if schools are coming to me, because many states are now starting to have screening laws where public schools are supposed to screen, they say, do we have to screen everybody? I said, well, I wish you would, but one way to screen just the most at-risk kids is to add a question on it when parents enroll their children in your school. Are there any close relatives who are very slow readers, inaccurate readers, don't like to read because they can't figure out the great big long words, who are terrible spellers and avoid written expression whenever possible, who are still left, right, up, down confused? And so on, the classic warning signs of dyslexia in adults. And if so, watch those kids really closely. Those are the at-risk kids. Those are the kids to screen for sure, because they're at risk. Not every child will have one, but about half of them will.
And those are great points. So one thing that I feel very strongly about is early the detection of dyslexia. And again, you said maybe age 6, 7, kindergarten and first grade. Mm-hmm. When we first suspected, my son was 6 years old and he was at the early parts of first grade. And we were told, you really can't tell if a child is dyslexic until they're 8, maybe even 9. He's a bright kid, don't worry about it. But we knew that something was off, and it was beyond just academic issues. Like he couldn't tie his shoes. There were a lot of age-appropriate things that others could do. And when you look at dyslexia and the symptoms beyond academics, you can even see it in younger kids, like age 6, who might not be reading, but there's way beyond being able to read or not.
Yes.
So I feel very strongly about it. So if there are teachers or maybe even sometimes spouses, I hear a lot of parents who are not on the same page about whether there should be an assessment done or not. So how would you what would you recommend to a parent to get an assessment done, to convince maybe their spouse or the school system to do an assessment when they're that young, when the school is saying, well, we need to wait until they're at age 8 or 9?
If you know or suspect dyslexia, especially if you know it's in the family tree, the absolute worst thing you can do is wait. Because if it's dyslexia, it's not going to go away. Mm-hmm. The child is just going to get further and further behind and more emotionally damaged until somebody finally figures it out. You can accurately test for dyslexia. Professionals can as early as halfway through kindergarten. In fact, the researchers are developing norm standardized tests for preschoolers. One of my favorite screening tools for kids that are young is the CTOP, CTOPP. That stands for Comprehensive Test of Phonological Processing. Now, of course, you have to have professional training to give it and to interpret the scores, but they've normed that down to age 4. So you can tell at the very first day of kindergarten, this child could be up to a year behind already. And the CTOP manual says that this test alone could be considered diagnostic of dyslexia. It's my favorite test of all. Of course, no professional would do only one test. But I do have, as you mentioned, some of those classic early warning signs. Not being able to tie your shoes is one of them, and so on. I learn what the warning signs are. I'd be happy to send anybody a list. It's also all on my website. I'm sure you have lists that you send out as well when parents contact you. But the inability to create words that rhyme. I tell teachers all the time, I wish all kindergarten teachers, the first week of kindergarten, would check every child for the ability to create words that rhyme. Because that's a phonological processing skill, and a child who doesn't have that is your high-risk reader right there. Children who've been exposed to speech and exposed to nursery rhymes and whatever are supposed to be able to generate words that rhyme by the time they are 4. So if they can't do it when they're 5, they're already a year behind. Now, my kids enjoy rhymes. They can repeat nursery rhymes just fine. Jack and Jill went up the hill. But if you ask one of my kids at the beginning of kindergarten, tell me every word you can think of that rhymes with cat. Most kids can come up with something. Cat, rat, mat, sat, something. My kids will come up with words that mean the same thing. Cat, kitten, dog, puppy. If you asked a kindergarten student, the first week of kindergarten who has dyslexia, tell me every word you can think of that rhymes with meat. They'll probably say something like meat, steak, McDonald's, pizza, hamburger, I'm hungry. And when you try to explain, sweetheart, meat and steak don't rhyme, they're going to be very confused about it. Because to rhyme, you have to have phonological processing skills, phonemic awareness. You have to realize a word is more than one sound. You have to be able to break the sounds apart, change a sound, blend them back together, prove that they're the same, except just the first sound is different. A lack of phonemic awareness, problems with phonological processing, is part of the research-based definition of dyslexia. It's something that every school can and should check. The very beginning of kindergarten. And there's so many good screening tools out there. But pay attention to the kids who are not at benchmark on the kindergarten nibbles, who can't generate words that rhyme when they start kindergarten. These are your high-risk kids. But of course, there are many, many, many other warning signs as well. And parents also contact me and say, I know dyslexia is in my family tree. My older child has it. I missed it with him, but I learned the warning signs, and now I'm watching my children who are, age 2, age 3, age 4 carefully, and I think my 4-year-old might have it. Can somebody test at age 4? No professional would test to diagnose at age 4, but I tell people, if you're already seeing those classic warning signs, jump in and do something. And I do send them the names of 2 books that you can often get from libraries or you can order yourself that have fabulous activities for preschoolers who are already showing the classic warning signs. It's teaching phonemic awareness and those other left-right skills, visual memory skills, and so on in an age-appropriate manner using games. One of the books was actually funded by Sweden. Many people are unaware that Sweden spends more money per person, per capita, on dyslexia research than any other country in the world. Why? Because the king of Sweden is dyslexic. And the 2 people in line to inherit the throne are dyslexic. And they have government-funded preschool. And so he hired researchers to say, what could we have our preschool teachers do that are on the government payroll anyway, that is age-appropriate for preschoolers, that if you don't have dyslexia, you're just playing games, but if you do, it's going to start teaching you how words work, how sounds within words work, and all the rest of it, so they'll be better prepared to learn to read by the time they hit kindergarten. And then they published it in a book, and it's available. and it's a fabulous one. The other one was created by the Slingerland organization to get kids ready for Slingerland by the time they're in kindergarten. So although no professional would test before the age of 5.5, and you can test with 95% accuracy at age 5.5, it doesn't mean there's nothing you can do. As a parent, there's a lot you can do if you know one of your preschoolers is at risk because it's in the family tree and they're already showing the warning signs. And if they want a list of those books, feel free to send me an email. I'd be happy to send them to you. Just put a subject, maybe preschool. I'll know what you want. Just send it to me, susan@brightsolutions.us, and I'll send you those 2 books that you can get either from libraries or you can buy directly from the publishers.
And we will put your email down in the notes section so people can easily reach back to you.
Okay.
So right now we talked about the things that the dyslexic brain and dyslexic child cannot do, but that there's so much they can do.
Oh, yes.
So can we talk about that to educate
absolutely.
parents that, sometimes I hear that, oh my God, this is like a death sentence to my child. It really isn't.
It isn't.
And it can be actually embraced. There's so much more than to reading and writing to dyslexia.
Thank you for bringing that up. In fact, I just did a recent, I'm doing a series of short videos that I post first on Facebook and then I make available on asksusanbarton.com. And one of them is find the gifts in your child, because dyslexia is not all bad news. Yes, it means you're going to have to be taught reading, writing, spelling differently, and you're going to feel dumb and stupid until you are. But also because the structure of their brain is different, the structure of their nerve pathways is different, they also have phenomenal gifts and talents in very predictable areas. And so I tell people you can easily identify dyslexia either by looking for all the weak areas, or by looking for children or teenagers or adults who are phenomenally talented in certain predictable areas. They also come with dyslexia. So I'll say a child with dyslexia or an adult won't be gifted in every single one of these, but I guarantee at least one, and often more than one. It could be because they're so good with visual, spatial, and 3-dimensional in their head, it could be some form of art. But it's not necessarily going to be painting or sketching. It might be, but parents have to think bigger than that. There are many famous dyslexic people who are great in photography, in architecture, in landscape design, in fashion design, in graphic design, in sculpture. When you have to be able to see it before you can even create it, they're amazing at seeing 3-dimensional stuff in their head in full color. And they can put that to great strength. People skills are usually outstanding. A lot of times they use that to survive. They've learned really early on, if I can get a teacher to like me, you're not going to grade me so hard, are you? So they tend to be the pleasers. And they also, tend to be the leaders in school until they feel like they're so stupid that nobody should be my friend. They make great motivational speakers as adults, great entrepreneurs, great leaders, because they know how to judge people. They know and who's good and who's not good and who's real and who's not real. They know how to motivate people and how to inspire people and how to get people to work with them. And it's a phenomenal skill. So if you want to hire somebody who has phenomenal people skills, if you've got a dysfunctional company and everybody hates each other, bring in somebody with dyslexia. They're going to be outstanding at that. Athletic skills are often a gifted area. And you can see that very early on in their life. It doesn't matter what the sport is. They're good at everything. So there's this kid who, in first grade is on the soccer team, and then he decides to do horseback riding, and then they decide to do gymnastics, and then they decide to do baseball or tennis or whatever it is. They're instantly good at it, better than everyone else. So they're often the captain of the football team, or on a different sport every year. They're often voted the most valuable player on everything that they join in. They're often scouted by the college teams and the professional teams who are looking down in the high school groups for who are the talented athletes out there. Unless, sadly, they're never picked up with their dyslexia, they never get the help they need, and when they're in high school, despite being the star athlete, sometimes they're pulled off the sports team because their grade point average dropped too low. And if only you spent more time on homework and less on sports, your grades would get better. No, they wouldn't. That's a disaster. So they make very good coaches, very good performers, athletes, and whatever. It's like amazing. Musical talent. Wow. Whether it's vocal or instrumental, amazing talent, as long as you keep them away from printed music. And trying to read anything on a flat two-dimensional system, whether it's letters, whether it's notes on a page or whatever, is a disaster. So these are the kids who you have to be careful, Mom. They might say, oh, I'd really like to play the piano. I'd really like to play the accordion or the clarinet or something. Great. Find a teacher who'll know how to teach by ear and not force them to learn by print. Because oftentimes if you force somebody to try to learn by print, pretty soon they'll come home and say, Mom, I don't like music anymore. I don't want to go. Don't let that talent stop. Get rid of the music. Sometimes they even fake it, by the way. They're really good at faking it. They'll tell, when a music teacher puts down a new sheet of music in front of them, they'll say, could you play that for me so I can hear the phrasing? And if they hear it once, they can sit down and figure it out. But reading from that printed music page is really, really hard. I'm sure I'm leaving out lots and lots and lots of them, but there are so many. I have them listed on our website. Very predictable gifted areas.
Well,
So we'll train them really, really well when they're adults. But sadly, schools are oriented around print. And so, if you feel so defeated by the time you're in 3rd or 4th grade, you're probably never even going to realize you have gifted areas. Mm-hmm. And that's why I tell parents constantly, which is why I did that little video on how to find your child's gifted areas. I tell parents all the time, school is not what real life is all about. In real life, nobody cares if you can take a printed test in 20 minutes. That doesn't happen in school. It's so important, Mom and Dad, that you find and grow their gifted areas and make them realize there's something they can do better than anybody else. Probably lots of different things, and make that an important point in their life. It's as important as getting the right type of tutoring. And I tell them, I don't care if the homework doesn't get done. Who cares? Homework doesn't matter. Helping this child realize they are gifted and talented in certain areas. They have value. There's so much they can do. There's so much they can offer. There are places that they can shine. Will help offset a lot of the emotional damage that will come when a teacher forces you to read out loud in class and everybody laughs at you.
So what are the things that you would recommend to parents and even some teachers who might have children or students who already feel that they're not good at anything, and they feel that their self-esteem is very low, and might have even given up trying, but now that maybe they're picking up on dyslexia and they're saying, okay, we can maybe teach this child, but it's more than just reading and writing, as we have been saying. How can we bring their self-esteem up, and how can they believe in themselves that there's so many other things they can do well? Of course, you can tell them the strengths of a dyslexic brain, but how do we get that the ignite back in their heart, in their soul?
Well, there's many, many ways I could answer that question. One thing that parents have to be careful of, that teachers who don't understand dyslexia may say, well, he won't even try. If only he were more motivated, he'd try, he'd try harder. It's like, no, you've got it wrong. What will make a child try harder is a taste of success. Once my kids know they can be successful, they'll want to read, they'll want to spell. So I tell parents all the time that, for instance, if their child is being tutored in the Barton system, before you see jumps in grade level scores on standardized reading tests, what you will see is a change in the attitude. By the end of level 3, this child who doesn't want to go to tutoring, hates reading, hates spelling, I'm never going to be good at this or whatever, you'll see the change in the posture. Suddenly they want to go. They want to go more than anything else. And say, Mom, put that aside. I want to go to tutoring today. As they start to realize, I can do this. It's just nobody explained it this way before. I can spell. I didn't know there were rules for this. I can do this. By the time they're finished with level 3, you will see that change in attitude. And of course, by the end of level 3 in Barton, all the teachers will be noticing the difference and going to Mom saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because they haven't been successful with this kid at all. So one thing that will change a child's attitude from defeated to willing to try is a taste of success. But there's more than that. And there is a wonderful book. In fact, it's the only book I found that's on this topic, and it's a fabulous book. I recommend this to all parents. It's by Ben Foss. It's called The Dyslexia Empowerment Plan. And the subtitle is How to Reignite the Love of Learning in Your Dyslexic Child. And it starts out by first helping a parent get it. And then it's a step-by-step guide is what I, as a parent, can do to prove to my child that he's not broken, he's not defective. And there's so much advice there that's wonderful. You can get it on Amazon.com in book form or on audio. Even has a survey in the back of it that it's a questionnaire that you can ask your child and then sketch out what he says to show him visually, based on what he's just said, where his areas of strengths will be and where good careers are, and finding all those heroes that are dyslexic in those careers and say, you can be just like these guys. But there's a lot that needs to be done. Accommodations, technology tools, workarounds, and so on. But blaming a dyslexic child because he isn't trying hard enough is the worst thing you can do. Our kids are willing to work
with you there.
5 times harder than anybody else and stay up till midnight doing their homework if they think there's a chance that it will succeed. One of my adults with dyslexia, who's now a dyslexia specialist, had mild dyslexia, but it was enough to stop her in high school. She goes, I knew when the teacher assigned a written assignment that if I wanted to get a B, I'd have to work on it for 3 nights solid and then do at least 8 hours of proofing. If I wanted an A, it would be an all week long project and nothing else would get done, but I wanted those A's so badly. I would do that. But they'll give up trying when they learn that it doesn't matter how long I spend on it. It doesn't matter how hard I try. I always fail anyway. Then why try? I'd much rather have a teacher think I'm stupid. I'm defiant than that I'm stupid. So watch for the kids who lack motivation. There's probably a reason why. Kids love to do what they can be successful at. If they're refusing to do it, maybe they can't be successful at it because they haven't had the right instruction yet or the right supports.
So what makes the OG-based systems different than what teachers teach in classroom? And how come dyslexic children can learn with OG-based systems but not in a classroom?
Well, there's a lot that's different. And people say, oh, isn't phonics the answer? And it's like, no, phonics is not the answer. Traditional phonics, this letter is A and it says this, and this letter is B and it says this. My kids can learn phonics. They can. They can tell you the sound that every letter makes, and yet they still can't sound out an unknown word. And phonics, traditional phonics, only focuses on reading, and it only explains reading for about 40% of the words. About 60% don't follow traditional phonics, and it doesn't do anything for spelling. So one thing that's different is any good, solid, complete Orton Gillingham system doesn't just work on reading. It works on reading and spelling at the same time and shows how they are related. There are a whole bunch of technical terms that make Orton Gillingham different than anything else, but one is immediate corrective feedback. I'm sorry, if you're a teacher standing in front of 30 kids, you can't tell, even if they're saying it out loud, who's saying the words right, who's saying the words wrong, figure out why it's wrong, go over and give corrective feedback to Tommy and Susie while the 28 other kids sit there and do it. You can't do that. But you can do that when in very small, intense groups or one-on-one. So it's immediate corrective feedback. It's in a certain sequence, starting from the most common, gradually working your way up to the least common. It's not in your traditional grade level sequence of teaching reading, because we're teaching way more than reading. And we're working on reading and decoding and spelling and encoding and grammar and fluency and vocabulary through morphology and everything as interrelated subjects. And so it builds on itself. It's cumulative. It's highly simultaneously multisensory. Now, every teacher in the world thinks, oh, I teach in a multisensory manner. I teach kids to sing a song that has C, the word C in it. I teach them to paint a C on their desk. I teach, and it's like, that's not what we do. But we're seeing it, saying it, moving it, writing it. We're doing all other sensory modalities at the same time as we teach them, color coding everything, so that their stronger modalities build up their weaker modalities. The exact opposite of that is learning styles. Somebody says, oh, he's an auditory learner, so we're going to teach everything through the auditory channel. Like, no, that has nothing to do with teaching a dyslexic child reading, writing, spelling. We don't care what kind of learner they are. We're going to use every sensory modality they have to teach them these skills to mastery. It's intense teaching, intense practice. And we teach to mastery. You stay on a lesson until they can do all parts of it easily with at least 90 to 95% accuracy. Because if you move on too fast, it's going to crumble on you. You got to have that solid foundation. There are many, many, many other things that make it unique. Those are just some of them. I have them listed out on brightsolutions.us. Just go to the tab that says what works or how to get help and click on Orton Gillingham, and it has all the different things that make it so different than just phonics. It's not phonics.
So for parents who want to start teaching their children the right way to read and write, can you explain the Barton system a little bit so that they can have an understanding of what the system is? I know your website has a lot of information on it, but for someone who says, I don't want to wait another day, I want to do this right away, but I don't know the system, I don't have the training. Right. Can you explain and give encouragement to those parents and maybe even teachers who have students but they haven't really had the appropriate training, how they can just jump on board quickly?
Sure. I actually have three different websites. I have one, brightsolutions.us, which is not about the Barton reading and spelling system, about specifically dyslexia. So good research-based information, the names of all the good Orton Gillingham systems there, everything else. If they want information specifically on the Barton reading and spelling system, they're going to have to go somewhere else. They're going to have to go to bartonreading.com. And that's where I recommend teachers who are curious about what's so different about how you teach. Show me what's different. If you go to bartonreading.com, right on that front page, it says, there's a red box that says, click here to see the demo. And I demonstrate how we use color coding and so on to explain syllable division and the impact that has on the vowel sounds. That blows teachers away. They've never had that type of training before. And that's just an overview. So as I mentioned, the Barton reading and spelling system is not the only Orton Gillingham-based system out there, but it was the only one designed specifically for parents who want to or have to tutor their own children. Now, if they said, I'm not sure I can be a tutor, I'm dyslexic myself, I assumed that. I was trained in 7 Orton systems, certified in 4, and most of the Linda Moon Bell systems, and used many of them professionally before I ever decided we needed yet one more designed for parents who have to, or are willing to, or want to tutor their own children for a variety of reasons. And of course, because I knew if I could teach a parent to do this well, and be as effective as a professional in a dyslexia clinic, then there's no reason that other people who want to be professional tutors couldn't use it. That learning specialists or reading specialists at public schools or private schools couldn't do it, as long as they can work with a very small group, because it have to be done intensely. And I assumed that a parent probably had no teaching background, wouldn't know how to create lesson plans, and is probably dyslexic themselves. And that makes them afraid of this. I said, don't let that be afraid of this. I designed it for you. Now, there is a 5-minute tutor screening on our website that anybody who wants to teach this way needs to take first. And it's kind of, I call it a hearing test, but what it really is, it's an adult level phonemic awareness test. We're trying to find out, do you yourself hear sounds rapidly enough, accurately enough, that you'd be able to hear mistakes? If not, then you can't teach this way. But if you can, it means you could teach this way. It doesn't mean your student is ready. Some children with dyslexia have other issues that are so severe they really truly need to work with a professional or a different approach. So we have a 10-minute student screening. It is not diagnostic. It doesn't prove somebody has dyslexia. It's just trying to figure out how severe is your auditory processing. Because some kids with dyslexia have pretty darn severe trouble with auditory processing. And if so, they're going to fail at any Orton Gillingham system, but there are other systems available to improve those skills first. So if you can pass the tutor screening and their child can pass the student screening, then a parent can get the Barton system either brand new from us, or of course schools can and professional tutors can, or if they're homeschooling and on a very tight budget, they can look on eBay or homeschool chat boards and get used levels. We provide free and limited support to anybody using it, whether they bought it from us or they got it from someone else. It doesn't matter. Now, it does take training to learn how to correctly do an Orton Gillingham system. It truly does, but we provide the training with the system. Each level, because we broke a very complex Orton Gillingham system into 10 bite-sized pieces. We call them 10 levels. And you start with level 1, and when a child masters it, you move on to level 2. So the level numbers have nothing to do with grade level. They're just a teaching sequence. And when you get level 1, all the training you need as a teacher, as a tutor, as a parent to learn how to do it well comes inside. It's 6 hours of step-by-step instruction by me with professional cameras and students and everything else, showing you how to do every part of the lesson plan, what mistakes to anticipate, what to do when they happen, how to do the reinforcement games. It's as close to my sitting beside you teaching you myself as I can possibly get. So your homework is spend several evenings or perhaps a marathon day watching this video first. Now you're ready to start teaching the lessons using the scripted lesson plans that we include, because we didn't assume that a parent would know how to create lesson plans or where to find books or a word list or sentences and all. It's all there, step by step by step, in one well-organized spot, with a reminder of what to do both in words and in pictures, with enough material to go through a lesson twice without having to use the same material. And I tell people, if it takes more than twice, call me. Something's not right here. I can help you with that. And then, of course, there's a post-test at the end of each level to ensure that a child has mastered the critical things taught in that level before you move on. So step by step by step, I'm teaching parents exactly what the professionals in clinics do in a way that's more accessible, because they can do it whenever they want to at their own home. And because they can do it themselves, they can often do it more often than just twice a week, because the absolute minimum amount of tutoring required to close the gap is two hours a week. And if you're paying a professional, that's usually the most parents can afford, because it's very expensive. But if you're doing it yourself at home, you can do it more often. And you don't have to drive for half an hour, sit for an hour in an office, drive half an hour back, and then hit homework and everything afterwards. So many parents, to my surprise, would rather hire somebody to do it than do it themselves. So if parents want to hire a certified Barton tutor, I have lists of certified Barton tutors by state. They can just send me an email. Probably that should go to susan@bartonreading.com, telling me their state and just saying list of tutors. I'll send you a list of every professional tutor who uses the Barton system in their state. And other Orton Gillingham developers will send you a list of people who are certified in their program. And the nice thing about technology, with technology, we can now actually even do Barton tutoring remotely over the internet using video conferencing and special software where all the tiles are up on the screen and everything else. So if there's nobody in your area, but you don't want to do it yourself, you can still hire somebody to do it for you if you want to.
It's amazing how you created this opportunity for so many families. You're really changing the lives of so many children every day.
Yeah,
You're so inspiring to me.
Well, anything we can do. I mean, you've been there, you know it. If you've ever lived through this, you would do anything to make it so nobody else has to suffer this way and go through the pain and anxiety. And because it doesn't hurt just the child. I mean, when a child is struggling in school, it hurts the whole family. I mean, I tell parents, you know, one major warning sign of dyslexia is the nightly homework wars. They start as early as kindergarten and first grade. I say, if you're spending 2 or 3 hours a night struggling over homework in first grade, and there's tears and I can't and whatever, and you no longer have a home life, you no longer have time to enjoy your other children, you're spelling each other over homework, you've got the slammed doors and the tears and whatever, something is wrong. First grade homework is not supposed to be that hard. Take action, figure out, why is it this hard for this student? So it hurts everybody, the family. I mean, in our family, you know, Ben was the first of 5 children. The other 4 children learned to resent the heck out of Ben because he got every ounce of the parents' time, attention, every night. And it was 6 hours of homework, struggles every night. They didn't get any help with homework. Every spare penny was spent on trying to get therapy for Ben. And they felt so neglected and so resentful. The parents were emotionally wiped out. I mean, the stress of trying to figure out what's going on, what can I do to help, causes them to prematurely get gray hairs, get ulcers, you know, get anxiety disorder themselves, trying to deal with teachers who are saying, oh, he's fine, oh, he's just a boy, oh, he'll outgrow this. If you didn't baby him so much, he could do it himself, and all these other horrible things. So it really does affect the whole family, not just the child.
That is so true. And as you said, I've been living through it. And I feel like it's a toll on the child, but to see the child suffer that much for something that can be prevented at an early age by just putting the diagnosis in and teaching them the right way so that they don't have to suffer through this homework. They don't have to suffer through everyday school feeling like they're failing. It's mind-boggling to me. The research is out there, the information is out there, but still schools have not implemented the right tools, and the teachers are not even sometimes aware. They don't even know what dyslexia is.
Yeah.
And similar to you, I went to a few universities and I said, maybe I'll do a master's program to get more educated on this. And I asked, universities what their programs are, what can they teach me about dyslexia? And even in, 2016, there was almost nothing out there.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling to me that this day and age, schools and teachers are not so fully equipped to help these children, which are 20% of the population in the classroom.
Yeah. And about 95% of your struggling readers.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we looked at all the dollars that are going behind trying to help struggling readers, but it's the wrong type, with reading interventionists and RTI and tier 1, 2, and 3 and special ed, and they're all trying to help, but they don't even understand often what they're looking at or how to help them in a way that's going to work. Can you imagine if we took that money and just used it to train teachers on what it is and what to do and how effective that would be? And I agree with you that the only way we're going to make huge change someday is to get the teacher training colleges to make it mandatory to have a course on dyslexia for every elementary school teacher, every reading specialist, every school psychologist. But sadly, that is still very rare these days. I've had wonderful people. I love an organization, by the way. I hope parents watching this know there's an organization in every single solitary state and every province of Canada called Decoding Dyslexia. Decoding Dyslexia Ohio, Decoding Dyslexia California. And I urge parents who know or suspect dyslexia, get involved. Because, their number one goal is educate the parents, educate the teachers. My firm opinion is, until we get everybody educated on what it is and what to do about it, we're not going to make a whole lot of progress. And of course, they advocate and legislate are their other two goals. And there's power in numbers. Join them, work together. But I've seen, sadly, they also understand that the problem is teacher education and parent education on this. And they've worked hard to get laws passed that every teacher has to get trained in dyslexia, and then the Department of Ed puts together a 30-minute slideshow that's a click, 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 and now you're educated in dyslexia. It's like, all of those years with all of that fight to get that is sometimes heartbreaking, because then teachers said, well, I remember looking at some slides once. Yeah, I know about dyslexia. And it's so much more complex than that. And so much more is needed, which is why I have 9 different videos for free on our website on dyslexia that anybody can watch. Principals can show at any staff meeting, at any teacher in service training. I put them up there to be shared because I can't be everywhere, you can't be everywhere. But the need for teachers to understand this and parents to understand this is everywhere. So I freely share that information, encourage people. If you want to learn more, there's tons out there now that's easily accessible for free on the internet. And brightsolutions.us is a good place to start.
It certainly is. And again, it's not that they can't learn, it's just not the same way more and more, it's the right way.
Right. And I don't like using the word learning disability and disability. In fact, I detest that word. I know you have to use it sometimes to try to get services in school or to try to get accommodations in school, but it makes you sound disability. Makes it sound like you're not able to do anything. You're not able to learn. Learning disability means I'm not able to learn? Nonsense. Nonsense. Our kids can learn and learn very, very well. It's just a different way of learning. It's just a different brain structure. It's just a different approach. The term neurodiversity has come up recently. And that's a kind of a complicated word, but yeah, not all brains are the same. Not everybody learns the same, but they can all learn. We just have to find the key to unlock it. And we have the key. We have the knowledge. We've had it for so long. We don't need tons and tons and tons more research. We've got tons of research. We need to use the research that we have. Sally Shaywitz, one of my heroes, the author of Overcoming Dyslexia, says, we don't have a research gap. We have an action gap.
Yeah, I mean,
And
she is such an amazing person as well. Like you, she has done a lot of research, and her book was the first one I read, and I'm definitely gonna put the link down there. It's
oh,
an
absolutely.
amazing book that really took me from step one to what dyslexia is, how the brain works, how to diagnose, and also what to do.
Yeah.
It was an unbelievable, it's like a Bible of dyslexia to me.
Yes. I pull it out and read it again every 2 or 3 years. And if you haven't read that one, I tell people all the time, if you're going to pick one book to read, because now there's tons of books on dyslexia, you're going to pick just one, that's the best one. Still.
I totally agree with you there. And it breaks my heart. And when I publish my books, I try to find the right genre out there. And they say it's either special needs or learning disabilities, which breaks my heart to put my books under those titles. And I really want to have a brand new genre out there for these books, because they're again not learning disability, they're not disabled.
Right. Learning difference. Yeah. They can learn. They just have to learn differently. And then we'll
It's
put them.
amazing how much work that still needs to be done. But I'm so thankful for you for being on the summit and sharing all your knowledge so willingly and freely with everybody that needs it.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And I hope the rest of your conference goes very, very well. And feel free to contact me anytime I can be of help.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you on the summit. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.